How is it going, boys and girls? Welcome back to Key West Waterman. My name is Aaron Young. Today we are deep into the Gulf of Mexico. I've got my good friend. If you've been watching long enough, you know these two, but it's been a while, so you'll see how long you've actually been watching. This is James. Well, this is his back half of him. And this is my other friend Lisa. They come down every year, multiple times, and dive with me. They're amazingly talented individuals. I'll talk a little bit more about them once we're underwater, but long story short, they normally come for 2 days. We do a couple of strike missions, shoot a bunch of fish, and they leave. They're actually here for 2 weeks, so I get a little bit more time with them. And they are of a very select group of divers that I trust. So today what we're gonna do, we're obviously out here, we're gonna do a little bit of spearfishing and hopefully harvest some fish. But I did wanna answer one question that is probably one of the most common questions I get on the channel on the spearfishing videos. People always freak out when I bleed and gut my fish in the water. So I want to cover that a little bit more today. We are in an area that's more known for sharks, but we're not going to be doing anything to create any uncomfortable or risky situations. We're going to be diving as we normally would. We're just in an area where we see more sharks. So what we're going to do is do what we normally do, maybe just let the cameras roll a little bit longer than I normally would, and just kind of talk through what happens when I'm actually braining and bleeding and gutting these fish, show you how the sharks behave, show you what triggers them, what doesn't trigger them, and hopefully we have something to eat by the end of the day. So that's enough talking. We're getting suited up and we're going to hop in the water. Let's take a look. Welcome back underwater, everybody. As always, I'm going to share my thoughts on some of the situations, and this one more specifically, I'm going to repeat a couple things a couple times. Diving with sharks is risky. Once you enter the ocean, you are at their mercy. We are always aware, responsible, alert, and a bunch of other things. Just, dive with sharks at your own risk. I'm commenting on our area in the Florida Keys, how sharks react to me. Different areas of the world, sharks can behave very differently. You could see some small hammerheads there off in the distance. This is when we just first dove in. I saw a couple, I think, of what they were, maybe silky sharks. I'm not a shark expert. I just know which ones behave certain ways based on how they look. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a marine biologist. I know every shark species on the planet. I don't. But yeah, we saw some of those small hammerheads. I think they were silky sharks. I could be wrong. And that was about it when we first jumped in. We hadn't shot anything yet. And this is just kind of a view of what's all around. We got some permit, barracudas. There's some jacks, little runners, mangrove snappers, all kinds of stuff, just littered with life. So we're there about 10 minutes, kind of just swimming around, checking everything out. We started to get into spearfishing mode. I dropped my flasher, my little pipe flasher, a couple times. It's just, a lot of you guys asked about this. It's just PVC and mirror vinyl. Nothing fancy. We make them ourselves. So I dropped it, let it get to about 40 feet, and something catches my eye, and I turn around. There's a nice African pompano. This is one of the best eating fish on the planet, in my opinion. And it's well within range. James and Lisa, they come down and dive with me a couple times a year, so I really wanted them to shoot one of these fish. And I could tell that they were being extremely friendly, so I had a feeling they would hang around. As long as I didn't charge them or do anything erratic. So you can see I'm calling Lisa down, trying to get her attention. She's screaming on the surface, telling me to shoot it. And I call her down. She comes down and plants a shot right in it, and it was a pretty cool clip. So now we'll get to the sharky side of things. In this area, typically, that commotion is going to bring sharks in. The first thing we're thinking is get that fish up as quickly as possible so we don't have to deal with any sharks. If you leave a fish down there dangling, it's going to get eaten. So we've dove together enough. We work as a team and try and avoid that. But something that people don't realize, and because they always ask, when you bleed fish, do you have trouble with sharks? well, we're spearfishing. So when you spearfish, blood is getting released into the water anyways. So it's unavoidable to have blood in the water. But you can see I was up, went back down just to fend anything off, just in case anything does come up. There's this murk layer down there, so a lot of times the sharks will come shooting out of that murk layer and grab the fish. But luckily, we didn't have any fish come in. Lisa's working on it, trying to get it up as quickly as possible. And I'm going to let a lot of this just roll. I had way too much footage to leave raw. I would have lost pretty much all you guys. I had like an hour and 45 minutes of just topside footage of us bleeding fish and swimming around, but I'll talk through it, and I'm going to be as honest as I can about the whole situation. Nice. That was cool. Do you have your knife? I want for the video. I want to brain and bleed them in the water.
Let me just
Okay.
get the gun off and then we'll do that.
So this is the part that stresses everybody out, is me bleeding the fish. Again, this could be different in different areas of the world. I know in the Bahamas, sharks are really bad. But here, I bleed fish all the time. My biggest concern is when the fish is alive, flopping around, not on my person.
Maybe snap some photos while it's bleeding. It could be like a thumbnail.
So again, I had way too much footage to leave this raw, but a lot of the clips I leave in a bit, and I'll talk through what just happened. Bled the fish. James is snapping some photos. Still all those hammerheads and silkies around, but they were staying so far out they actually never even came in any closer than they had been the majority of the time we were there. It didn't change their behavior, is my point.
Here, you get some photos, Lisa. That's good. Like I said, this is all like raw, natural footage.
So I gave that fish back to Lisa. They wanted to get some photos. James had his big fancy camera. And they swam around probably 7-8 minutes with that fish, blood in the water. Not once did any of those sharks come in any closer to check them out, give them any trouble, charge us, act, concerning in any way. Big old turtle came in to check out James. Pretty cool.
We've been here about 15 minutes, had some nice APs come in, and Lisa got a shot on one. Nice, healthy one. One of the prettiest fish out there, and one of the most delicious by far. So we bled that fish. I just let the camera roll. And you can see there were sharks when we jumped in, but normally shooting a fish is what triggers the sharks. They just hadn't really got fired up yet or something, but shot, got the fish up fine, no issues. We bled it, sat there, no sharks came in, as you can see in the video. In my opinion, and this varies based on where you are in the world, but here, the sharks react more to the action of the fish struggling, and when you do spear it, and when you spear it, it bleeds anyway, so it's not like there's not blood in the water already. Oh, no, it's attached to the float, but
Oh, that's right.
hold it up real quick.
Hold on 1 second, let me put this knife away.
And I'll go in a little more depth when I'm in water about the shark thoughts, but we find that here they are more reactive to the shot itself and the fish struggling. Look at that.
Yeah!
Oh. There we are, fish in the box. We're gonna hop back in. And as we sit here and continue to shoot fish, and more action happens, as I always say, action brings action. The sharks will probably start to show up, but yeah, there we are, first fish in the box. So we cruised around for another 20 minutes trying to get another African pompano to come in, and we never saw any, so we decided to start taking some dives on these snapper, and this was actually the very first drop. It's James behind the gun. It's kind of cool to get some footage of him because he normally has a camera in his hand. So I wanted to film him, and first time shooting his new gun, and he stoned him a really, really nice snapper. So this is normally the moment, if he didn't stone that fish, this is normally the moment we would deal with sharks. I'm not saying that we don't deal with them. We deal with sharks all the time. It's just not the bleeding that makes the sharks have an issue. Typically when he shoots that mangrove and it's down there struggling, that's more often than not.
Those are some moosely mangrove snappers. I think I saw some red snappers underneath them too. I couldn't tell what they were. They were much bigger.
Sorry, that's more often than not when we're going to deal with the sharks. It's the fish struggling on its way up. That's why so many people down here have trouble with sharks rod and reel fishing. If you've been rod and reel fishing down here, you know a lot of days it's hard to even get a fish up off the bottom before the sharks get a hold of it, and it's because that fish is struggling. So same thing, James bled this fish. You can see the blood coming out. I sat there for 4 minutes with the camera on. No sharks came in. Again, I'm not going to let you sit there and stare at blue water for 4 minutes. I will lose you guys. But this was actually not a great day to do it. There just weren't a lot of sharks around. But it does prove that even though there is blood in the water, we bled that African pompano probably 30 minutes before this. Tons of blood in the water, and you know, a pile of sharks didn't show up. So James got him a nice snapper. Now I want to get in on the fun, obviously. This time of year, the snappers spawn. So you'll see bigger ones. They'll be stacked up more together. There's normally really big snappers out in this area. It's not uncommon. It was just cool to see them all in a ball like this. So drop down, get to their depth. Just kind of mellow. Not really swimming towards them, and they come up pretty much right up to me. And I'm still figuring out the GoPro. I'm shooting manually in white balance. You can see it's pretty blue down on the bottom, which is pretty close to what it looks like. Everyone asks for filters on the camera, but I don't like that. I want you guys to see what I see. So it does look a little blue. You can see there's one fish I'm pointing at. I got in mind kind of behind the rest of them. You can kind of get puppy fever when there's this many fish. I just try to pick one and focus on it. And there's one that's just a little bigger than the rest, and I just wait until it turns and patient with the shot, and luckily I got a stone shot. And the stone shots help a ton out here because that fish isn't struggling. It's not creating that commotion in the water. Again, I'm going to repeat myself a bunch. That's what attracts the sharks in my findings, is that action, the struggling fish. To them it looks like an opportunity and an easier meal than chasing a fully alive and capable fish. So this is a pretty good angle on the bleeding method I use. Right up under the gills, kind of between the neck and the gill, that clear membrane, run the knife right along there, and you can see that blood comes rushing out. And again, we do this for meat quality. Bleeding the fish, in my findings, increases the quality of the meat. We are doing this to eat after all. I actually take it one step further. A lot of people don't do this. I gut all my fish for a couple of reasons. The air coming out is from the swim bladder. When a fish is brought to the surface under stress, it can't equalize its swim bladder. so the air expands, but that's what that is. Anyways, I gut fish. 1, it continues the bleeding process. 2, I like to give those leftovers back to the spot, that all of those entrails can be eaten by the remaining fish. And lastly, it kills less ice. When I go to ice that fish, I can pack the belly with fish. It cools the fish faster, and it's less mass to cool, so it burns less ice throughout the day. And from a commercial standpoint, that's where that came from mainly. You can see in the water 4 minutes with this fish bleeding. This is the closest interaction we had with a shark. It's probably 100 feet away from me. That's the closest any shark came at any point on this spot after bleeding an African pompano and 2 mangrove snappers. That was one of the silky sharks. It had been there since we had got there, but yeah, that was the closest one ever came. Kind of surprising. Here's another clip of James. James is actually an amazing diver. He just normally has a camera on him. I've known him for quite a few years now. He's one of the few people I trust being in the water with. I know he knows what I expect of him. I know what he expects of me. This fish he didn't stone, so you can see the fish is on the bottom, or not on the bottom, down below thrashing. Why I stay down there is to fend off any sharks. This is that moment when we normally have the issue, is when the fish is down there struggling. There's an opportunity. If there's not a human body around it, a lot of times that's when the fish will get grabbed. James does a good job at getting it up quick, getting his hands on it.
Them fish are insane. How big they are.
He bled this fish just like the rest. There was 5 minutes of us floating on the surface. I just was filming to see if anything came in. Nothing came in. This next clip is pretty cool. James went and grabbed his big camera and got some third person of me. I know you guys enjoy the third person shots. It was cool to get some of James. This is with his big fancy camera. You can kind of see my dive technique a little more. I keep that gun close until I'm ready to line up. I got a target in mind. Extend out nice and slow, 2 hands. I stoned the first fish. I actually hit a second fish. I felt kind of bad. Luckily, it would look like just a flesh wound. Hopefully that fish made it, but just patient, slow shots, and I luckily got another stone shot there. And you can see I don't bundle that gun around me. A lot of people, when I see them shoot fish, they want to bundle the line, the shaft, the gun, and the fish all together. My wood gun's going to float, so I'm not worried about that.
Whoops.
When I take that shot, I immediately go to the fish or to the line, pull it to the fish to myself. I know I want that gun away from me, that line away from me. That's just how I do it. It comes with time. I know you learn as you go, obviously. I was a beginner at one point, and over the years, you just figure out what works for you. That's a pretty cool shot. I'll actually link James's website in the description. He does all kinds of photography. He's got prints available for sale. He's got art and galleries all over the Florida Keys. He's just a really, really talented individual. So I'm actually going to slow this clip down. From my head cam, you can see I hit the second fish on accident. I truly didn't think that the shaft would go this far through the fish on that far of a shot and a fish that big. I stoned the first one, but it just hit the belly, the back end of the belly of the second fish. But it looked like it was just meat. I don't think it hit the gut cavity, so hopefully that fish will live, but didn't mean to do that.
Just brute snappers, like unbelievable. I'll get a measurement on this one. This thing's probably almost 8 or 9 pounds for a mangrove. That's about as big as I've ever seen. I've never got one over 10 down here, but we've been here an hour and a half shooting fish, bleeding fish, gutting fish.
and we hadn't really had any shark issues. It's actually surprising for here. Normally at least see a few bigger sharks, bull sharks or lemons or something, but it's just all been some little small, they look like silkies or spinner sharks, and it's actually a bunch of hammerheads down there, but yeah, so we're here, bleeding, gutting, and shooting, and we haven't had any shark issues yet. Just to give you a measurement here, a lot of you guys like this, 27 inches. Some really, really nice ones, and we are in, we're about in 100 feet of water, so a lot of you guys like that information as well. Got a happy box so far. So we were done here at the first spot. We were there for actually we were there for 2 hours. We had one fish get eaten, and it was by a Goliath. Didn't have any sharks charge us. Like I said, we're bleeding and shooting and gutting fish the entire time. That was actually strangely quiet. Normally out here you at least see the big sharks, but I didn't see any. Did you see a bull or anything? The hammerheads, and I think, what were the other ones? Silkies or?
Silky, I think.
Silkies?
Yeah, it looked like a silky.
I'm not a shark expert. It looked like a silky, but we're done here. We're on to the next. We're gonna run a little bit and hit another spot. So that is our second spot. Never actually dove this one. I'm excited. It's a little hump, look like a wreck or something, but wow, is there some life. This was actually my first time diving this spot. A friend gave me this number, and I had never stopped by it. Just all kinds of life. They look like cigar minnows. There was yellowtails, blue runners, and I couldn't tell. I've never actually seen them diving. I've caught them, but they looked like vermilion snapper. At depth, they would lose their red color, but just the shape of them, they looked like vermilion snappers. Maybe it was a vermilion snapper spawn. I don't know. It was just really, really surprising not to see more predators here. Typically, when you have a ball of this much life, this much bait, there's going to be predators all around it. And it just, there was one barracuda. That was it. Very surprising. All that life and no predators. I just have a hard time believing it. Saw one barracuda. Yellowtails, they look like vermilions. I've never seen them in the water. Vermilion snappers are normally really deep down here. We normally catch them in 150, 200. I've never seen them actually this shallow, but I couldn't tell. It looked like vermilions. Blue runners, cigar minnows. I mean, it was so much bait. It was just unbelievable. But sometimes that's how it goes. Great spot, nothing to shoot, so we're gonna head on to the next. I wanted to do a little chumming here. This isn't anything out of the ordinary. I had an old frozen bonita that I brought with us, so I just wanted to chunk it up, get the bait feeding, see if we could get any more. We were looking mainly for African pompanos this day. Obviously you take what swims by. There were some jacks around and stuff and permit, so same type of ecosystem that the African pompanos like. So I chopped this bonita up, flaked it. Lots of blood in the water, chum obviously. And didn't have anything. No sharks came in and reacted to this at all, actually. Very strange for the area that we were in, but it's the truth. We were here for maybe 30 or 40 minutes doing dives, throwing flashers. Didn't have any African pompanos come in, but there was another ball, those big snappers, and there were a couple in it that just looked massive, that were bigger than most I had seen. So I threw my flasher, did a drop. This is actually a really cool clip. I get to depth and just kind of sit there, pretty mellow. And a lot of times the fish will come and check you out, and that's what they did. And a lot of times, not that I'm shooting something just to shoot something, but if you shoot something, it will start to commotion and new fish will come in. But just to give you a little bit of perspective, the smallest fish in this school is probably 4 or 5 pounds. I see one that looks quite a bit bigger than the rest of them, and not my favorite shot. It was just too big not to shoot. Again, this is typically when you would have an issue with sharks coming in. You guys, if you've been watching my videos for long enough, you've seen plenty of clips of me trying to fight big mangroves out in the Gulf and the sharks coming up after me. Trying to create some commotion. What? Did you really? Oh my gosh. And you can see some little tiny sharks down there swimming around. Those are never a concern to us. It's hard to tell on camera, they're maybe 3 feet long. They never give us any grief. But after I got my hands on this fish, I realized how big it was. I've never actually had a mangrove over 10 pounds, and I can't say for sure whether or not this one was. It was very close to it. I did gut the fish, so I didn't get an official weight, but it was almost 9 pounds gutted, and it had quite a bit inside the belly. So I imagine it was pretty close, but pretty cool either way. Safe to say it's my biggest, or at the very worst, my second biggest mangrove I've ever speared. Doesn't happen every day. We pulled a couple nice mangroves off that one too. I think one was, the one I got was probably, may have been my biggest. Or I know for sure the biggest of the day itself. Probably 8.5 gutted. I've never broken the 10-pound mark on a mangrove, but that one was pretty close. Quite honestly, this is probably gonna be the worst shark episode ever. I haven't seen any sharks. Bunch of small ones. Typically out here, we're dealing with big bulls and lemons and the occasional tiger. But they aren't around today. No complaints. It's making the diving really easy. You're not having to fight them for our fish, but it's very strange we're not seeing them today. But it's about 1:30. I think we're gonna hit one more spot and probably cruise in shortly. So this was our last spot of the day, and it's probably pretty obvious. I mean, we could have sunk the boat in mangroves. Just we didn't need more than we had. I think we had maybe six or seven mangroves total, and then one African pompano. James and Lisa freeze some and take some home with them, but no reason to just sit here and pummel them. Always a treat to be able to see all the big ones. And this was the first big shark we saw the entire day. Could not believe it. From the surface, it looked like a decent lemon. It was a little foggy. It was kind of sitting on that hazy layer. I had dropped my flasher, and I thought my camera was off, and I was going to turn it on, but it was on, and I turned it off. And Lisa had shot a mangrove And this is a different shark. This is a bull that came up out of the murk when she shot the mangrove. So I'm down there. I'm trying to just put myself between the shark and the fish. Again, that's normally when we deal with the sharks the most, is when there's a struggling fish in the water. And I truly couldn't believe it. That was the first shark we had saw all day. You can see he comes up, but not violent. Just came up, kind of swam at me. I poked it off, and he turned away. Nothing out of the ordinary.
You got him? Did you see the cobia? That cobia came up. Oh my gosh. Just think of this is the same fish that I swim around behind my house and shoot in the mangroves. Like, how is that even possible? It's unbelievable. So we've got a happy box. We're done out here. It's only 2 o'clock, but we've got enough fish. So we're gonna call it, head back. I'd like to have a little, I don't know, and final analysis moment once I watch all my underwater clips and kind of share. The whole purpose of this was to talk more about how sharks react to bleeding fish, shooting, spearfishing, and all that stuff. So maybe we'll do some cooking as well, but long story short, we're done out here, and we'll see when we get back. All right, so I just wanted to kind of close this video out and share some final thoughts. Not actually going to do a cooking segment on this episode. We did eat a lot of the fish. One night, James made some fancy tostada tacos things that were incredible with the snapper. And then another night, Will took over and did a sushi night. He had some amazing sashimi. We made some hand rolls and some regular rolls, and he did some fancy stuff with this frozen wasabi like sorbet. It was unbelievable. We had a great time. But I'm in here editing the footage and doing my voiceovers, and I just kind of wanted to, share my final thoughts on does bleeding fish create more or bigger problems with sharks? And I don't think so. Here in Key West, I don't think so. Again, I cannot comment on the rest of the world. I know there are very different shark situations in different areas. I haven't traveled a whole lot. I know the Bahamas is pretty bad. I didn't see many sharks when we dove Belize. Fiji, there was a few sharks, but again, the world's a huge place. There are a lot of sharks that I haven't dealt with, I haven't confronted in situations I'm not educated in. So I'm commenting on our sharks. And I mean, for example, like this first spot, we were there for 2 hours. We bled 5 fish, completely bled 5 fish, and no sharks showed up that weren't there at the beginning. When we first jumped in, there were hammerheads and a couple of, again, I think silkies. No sharks showed up over 2 hours, blood and guts in the water. No extra sharks showed up. I think that's actually something I've always wanted to mention when people ask about chumming, and it's the same thing for bleeding. Chumming doesn't create fish. Fish have to be in the area. So the same thing, if sharks aren't in the area, the blood's not going to create more sharks. They have to be around. The blood is just going to maybe bring them in a little more, but we saw that, it wasn't a huge effect on this day. Again, there's exceptions to everything. When it comes to diving with sharks, be safe, use your best judgment. Best rule of thumb I can advise is, if you're uncomfortable, take yourself out of the situation. If you're uncomfortable, you're going to make bad decisions. You're not going to be thinking clearly. That's my general rule of thumb. If I'm ever uncomfortable, I remove myself from the situation. And again, dive at your own risk. Just be smart. I'm not taking the risk away from sharks. I'm just trying to shed a little light on what I deal with and what I see. Yes, that's all I have. Be safe out there. Sharks are dangerous. They can kill you. Unfortunately, people do lose their lives every year due to sharks. A lot of them can be freak accidents. It's really hard to say without being there, but all you can do is be safe, dive smart, watch your buddy. Any questions, leave them in the comments. And I think that's all I have. I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.